I cheated on my husband. Now I can't choose between two loves. Part 2. The days after the networking event passed in a blur, but Adrian's face lingered in Emma's mind like the after-image of a bright light. She told herself it was nothing, just a fleeting connection, a moment of excitement in an otherwise monotonous life. But then he texted her. "Hey, it's Adrian. I found this gallery opening I thought you might like. Let me know if you're free this weekend." Emma stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She hadn't given him her number, but he must have gotten it from the event's guest list. Part of her knew she should delete the message, should ignore it, and focus on her marriage. But another part of her, a part she hadn't acknowledged in years, wanted to say yes. She replied before she could overthink it. "I'd love to. Send me the details." The gallery opening was nothing like the networking event. It was intimate, the walls adorned with black and white photographs that seemed to pulse with emotion. Adrian greeted her at the door, his smile warm and genuine. "I'm glad you came," he said, his voice low. "Me too," Emma replied, and she meant it. They wandered through the gallery together, Adrian pointing out his favorite pieces and explaining the stories behind them. Emma listened, captivated by the way he saw the world, so differently from James, who viewed everything through the lens of logic and practicality. Adrian noticed the small things, the way light filtered through a window, the curve of a shadow, the quiet beauty in the mundane. As the evening wore on, they found themselves in a quiet corner, sipping wine and talking about everything and nothing. Adrian told her about his travels, his struggles as an artist, his dreams of creating something that would outlast him. Emma found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years, sharing her own fears and aspirations, the parts of herself she had buried beneath the weight of her responsibilities. When the night ended, Adrian walked her to her car again. This time, the air between them felt charged, as if something unspoken hung in the space between their words. "I had a great time," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Me too," Adrian replied, his eyes searching hers. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, and the thought sent a shiver down her spine. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped back and smiled. "Good night, Emma." At home, James was asleep on the couch, the TV flickering in the dark. Emma stood in the doorway, watching him for a moment. He looked peaceful, his face relaxed in a way it rarely was when he was awake. She felt a pang of guilt but pushed it aside. She hadn't done anything wrong, she told herself. She was just living. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Adrian began to see each other more often. They met for coffee, for walks in the park, for quiet dinners at out-of-the-way restaurants. Each time, Emma told herself it was harmless, just friendship, but the more time she spent with Adrian, the harder it became to ignore the growing attraction between them. James, meanwhile, remained oblivious. He was busy with work, as always, and when he was home, he was distracted, his mind still on his projects. Emma tried to talk to him, to bridge the gap that had grown between them, but it felt like trying to hold on to smoke. One night, after a particularly frustrating conversation with James, Emma found herself texting Adrian. "Can we meet? I need to talk." He replied almost immediately. "Of course. My place." Emma hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen. She knew what going to his apartment would mean, knew she was crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But the loneliness was too much, the ache in her chest too sharp to ignore. "I'll be there in 20, she typed, then grabbed her keys and slipped out the door.